This is Rich Straffolino with the Department of No. Jason Elrod, CISO at Multicare Health System. I got to ask, what has been your priority this week?
Wow. If it isn't dominated by the mythos drama, it is all about the upcoming HIPAA security rule changes in 2026 and my brand new favorite, which I think we're going to talk about today, the CI Fortify.
Yes, yes. Oh, so many wonderful things to fill the mind palace of your brain. It's truly glorious, truly glorious. I hope Jonathan Waldrop, the CISO over at Acoustic, has had a similar priority laden week. Jonathan, where's your mind been at this week?
Oh man, definitely. We're in the throes of the middle of the quarter. Not nearly as interesting as what Jason's got going on, but we're not at the beginning of the quarter, so nobody's excited about it. But we're not at the end of the quarter yet, and nobody's rushing to finish all those projects. So we're right in that kind of dead zone in the middle, trying to keep things on track.
It's not too late. You can jump on the Mythos hype train. Don't worry.
That's true. That's true. And Mythos.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, you have to say that. ... And Mythos for all CISOs for all time. All right, producer Josh, we got everything prioritized. Now let's run that open and get into the show.
From the CISO series, it's Department of No.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Department of No, your virtual Friday strategy meeting, and I'm going to even say a debrief here this week. We are super excited. We've got some fantastic guests, and we have a fantastic sponsor helping make the show possible, Vanta. Thank you for supporting the show. We'll talk about them more later. Remember, if you want to get involved in our YouTube chat, you can if you're on YouTube and watching us live. We're broadcast every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. If you're watching us later, I guess you could leave a comment. I have no way of really seeing it or responding it now, and I'm not going to respond to ones from last week. It gets into a whole time is linear. I don't have time to get into it, but feedback at CISOseries.com for more of the async communication, if that is your bag. Before we get into the news, just a quick reminder that the opinions expressed by our guests are in fact their own, not necessarily those of their employer. So keep that disclaimer in mind at all times. You are legally now required. We've got about 30 minutes, so let's dive into our No or No segment. This is where there is so much news, so much going on. We need to jump through some stories quickly, find out if these are things you should be bringing to your security teams. First up here, I saw this one making a ton of waves. I was scratching my head a little bit, so I need some help unpacking this. Google Chrome installs 4 GB AI model on devices. Computer scientist and lawyer Alexander Hant reports that recent versions of Google Chrome automatically download a roughly 4 GB Gemini Nano AI model to user devices without explicit consent when default AI features are enabled. He says the file installs silently and can be re-downloaded after deletion. Hanf argues the behavior may violate privacy laws, cause increased power usage, and calls for an opt-in prompt. Jason, I'm going to start with you here. Google updates Chrome all the time. We don't usually bat an eye when it downloads a thing, and we don't necessarily get consent here. But do you think there's more about a local AI model install that we need to dig deeper into, or is this a no thank you for you?
I'm going to go with a nothing burger here.
Okay.
So we do need to know more about it and should definitely have an opt-in here. But this really hasn't earned the airtime in my weekly stand-up. For instance, this is just Google updating something with its latest AI. Apparently, if this is a surprise to anybody, they don't run any kind of Microsoft operating system.
Yes, I was going to say, I mean, people were angry about Windows 11 adding all this stuff, but no one was asking for, I guess, explicit consent for this. It was just, we're at the behest of Microsoft. We're at the behest of Google with Chrome. Jonathan, I'm curious, are you of the same vein, or does this maybe rise a little higher in your book?
Wait, are we saying that when you download things from the internet, there's fine print to read and there's other fluff that you didn't know you were downloading that you should go look through to see if you're downloading it? I'm surprised that we're surprised, frankly, right? To me, I agree with Jason. This is kind of a I probably just assumed that was already happening anyway. I don't mean to dismiss some of the privacy concerns, and there was an environmental aspect to it. If everybody starts running these models locally, and we're gonna all that kind of stuff. So I think it's good to be aware of. But this is not taking up any cycles in my week this week.
I will say, as someone who runs their hard drive because I'm too lazy to clean it out, pretty close to full up all the time. I am sympathetic to the fact that 4 gigabytes is a non-trivial amount and could all of a sudden be like,
That
oh
is
man,
fair.
what do I got to uninstall? Oh man, I got to delete
That's
all
probably
those.
the takeaway.
Empty trash can. Empty trash can.
Oh, you know what? That's the
Data
trick there.
retention policy, Rich. Come on.
Dang. No, I ZFS snapshot everything. I have years and years of snapshots on this thing. Don't worry. All right, next up here, let's this is one of the more interesting stories of the week here. New PCP jackworm steals credentials and cleans Team PCP infections. This is the most I never thought I'd talk about PCP so much in my time here at the CISO series. A new malware framework called PCP Jack is stealing credentials from exposed cloud infrastructure while actively removing Team PCP's access to the systems. It targets services like Docker, Kubernetes, Redis, MongoDB, RayML. You pick your enterprise deployment, you're probably using it. Sentinel Labs believes that PCP Jack may have been developed by a former Team PCP affiliate or member who started their own operation. Jonathan, this is now the second week in a row we've seen threat groups, I'm going to say, kind of getting pissy at each other. Do we need to know more about what's causing what seems to be increased competition among threat actors? Or if they want to fight each other, is this a great no thanks, don't need to know more situation for you?
So first of all, I would just say that this is the ultimate insider threat turn disgruntled employee threat actor type of thing. So even the bad guys organizations have this problem that we still have in the corporate kind of enterprise side, right? So I don't want to overlook that for one.
Mm-hmm.
How much do we care? I don't think most companies are in a position to try to figure out necessarily who or from a retributional standpoint, like why do we need to attribute? There's certainly some tactics and techniques that we can glean from that, and knowing maybe what they do next. But I think the key here is that nobody's happy. Even the bad guys are fighting against each other. So is this a case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend? I don't think we're quite on that side of it yet, but no, this is very interesting to see. But again, to me, my big takeaway was like, wow, they have the same HR problems that we do.
Yeah, and Jason, threat actors, they're just like us? Question mark?
Oh, yeah. Question mark. Yeah. When I look at this, I was like, let them eat themselves. That's the kind of competition that happens in the market, even if that market is a criminal one. So it's funny that people are getting surprised that, people are going to have their own side hustle against the hustle and then go out there, and then there's going to be competition. I do like the point that was just made, hey, maybe there is some tooling or some understanding about like, hey, practices and procedures and technologies they're using to attack each other that we can watch. So part of me wants to land, like I say, feed it a little bit. Oh no, I'd pay your ransomware if I wasn't already paying theirs.
Wow, with some advanced negotiation techniques.
Wow,
here. I like this.
sorry,
off to the lowest bidder.
You're the second person here. I've already bought Girl Scout cookies. So not to make the assumption that those are criminal organizations, but but
as the father of a Girl Scout,
I've already paid.
You're fine. Yeah,
off we go.
So this is interesting. I love the idea of like more competition among threat actors might actually benefit end users. I can't dispute that logic. It's troubling, but yes. Okay. I think we solved it, guys. The more time they
spend fighting each other is the less time they spend fighting us. So
I like that as a takeaway here. We're going to need it too, because it turns out Linux kernel flaws abound. Security researchers at Theory are informing admins of a newly discovered security flaw that's been hiding in the Linux operating system since at least 2017. Named CopyFail, this uses they used an AI power scanning tool called Xint code or Xint code, whatever you got. It allows anyone with a basic account on an affected computer to seize full admin control. It also works as an escape route from cloud containers, which is, bad. Theory said the flaw resulted from 3 separate, individually unremarkable changes to the Linux kernel, and no one recognized the danger created by their combination for nearly a decade. And then we also saw the dirty frag privilege escalation Linux kernel bug that allows users to escalate to root on all major distros. Embargo on that was actually broken early, so there's actually no patches or CVEs even assigned to it yet, but a mitigation has been published for that, so not all hope is lost there. But, Jason, we're going to be talking about the kind of the patch wave coming at us a little bit later in our wider discussion here. But A 9-year-old potential Linux kernel bug. Do you want to know a little bit more about this, or is this more academic than a critical concern for you?
No, this one lands specifically in the no item. We want to know more about this one, because this is something that's not only a vulnerability but an exploitability across systems. And I think there's a distinction there between things that are vulnerable and things that are exploitable. And given the Mythos effect that has dominated the news cycle, I think we're going to be seeing more automation of these types of composable exploits being taken advantage of by threat actors. And our ability to pivot to rapid mitigation will be critical. I mean, if you think about the copy fail, that's 3 small things to create one big issue. So our evaluation of the impact of a CVE now needs to contemplate that composable nature of it. It needs to contemplate that type of chaining. So we cannot rely on vulnerability management. We have to focus on exploitability management, and that's a little bit different of a thing.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Jonathan, where are you at with these Linux kernel flaws?
Yeah, I love the thought behind exploitability management, and I think that is a train that more of us should be on. We focus a lot because there's tons of vulnerabilities, like you're talking about, Rich, that are purely academic, that they happened in a very clean lab environment where these conditions are set, type of thing, but you wouldn't actually find it in the real world. This one feels a little more dangerous. The internet runs on Linux, if you haven't heard.
Turns out.
Yeah, as it were. So this one really is going to be one to watch and to know more about, particularly if you're running in a cloud environment, something that's available over the internet, and all those kind of typical things we would look for in that exploitability. What's the risk level to us? This has taken up some cycles where some of the other articles haven't.
Yeah, we'll be we got this in our discussion, so we'll be digging into that in a little bit, just a second. But we have to talk about possibly the greatest story of the year. I'm not going to lie here. It turns out every Yarbo lawnmower is essentially hacked instantly. No problem. Don't worry about it. Security researcher Andreas Makris disclosed that every Yarbo lawnmower is essentially a Linux computer whose root password is reset to a known stock value with each firmware update, and they're all the same. Like, it's the same root password. Makris was able to vibe code a map of all mower locations, remotely control them, and get passwords for the networks they were on, and directly disregard user commands to shut down, not run over somebody. Those would be the things that it could override. The company had no bug bounty or channel to report bugs, and when trying to go through customer service to report the bug, was told that this was by design so Yarbo could diagnose issues. Jonathan, we all know IoT security is a disaster, but do you want to know more about what's going on with Yarbo because there's blades attached to the IoT, or is this so sensational it's a no thanks for you?
No, I think we should really care about this, because anybody who lives in suburbia and has lawnmowers, I mean, this is a very real risk now. All of a sudden, now we have machines with blades. No, I think if there's something to take away from here, it is that we had we've got a company who had a responsible disclosure attempt, and they said, no, that's how it's supposed to work. I mean, and who knows? I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't disclosing it, and I wasn't taking the call, right? But I think that is really where we need to train some external facing customer service folks to, even if you think it's so far fetched, take the call, send it to your security team, let them have a look at it. This also does remind me of, it was about 10 years ago, Wired had an article about hacking a Jeep Cherokee on the road. It was like people they knew were in it and this kind of thing, but the same type of thing, taking over it. And I think it really just shows you how precarious things are. Have we talked about Mythos yet? But
I gotta drink again. All right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's definitely so some of the underlying aspects. Once we get past the murder blades on the lawnmowers, murdering lawnmowers, it is really kind of an interesting thing to think about.
Potentially murderous lawnmowers.
Oh, sorry. Yes, yeah, allegedly.
No, let's not impugn the integrity of our Linux running lawnmowers, who have kernel vulnerabilities too. On top of everything, Jason, what about you? Is this too how are you contextualizing this story? Sensational, terrifying. Where are you at?
All of the above. This is definitely, it's sensational. It's terrifying. And, not just because I have a kill bot in my garden shed. It's really about the backdoor controls built in, right? By creating a backdoor by design into your infrastructure, remember, it's a feature, not a bug. You're having this pathway from your IoT CPS, cyber physical security. It's a pathway to the rest of your IT infrastructure. And this particular attack vector is advancing rapidly. So it's a matter in personal life as well as much as the enterprise life. Another example of that front line being everywhere. In healthcare, I'm already sort of in that space where there is a cyber to physical impact. Like you come in and you impact like an infusion pump or something. There's a potential to have a physical human impact. I just didn't think I'd have an episode of Battle Bots in my neighborhood.
Well, I'm also thinking, I just realized, like, because this is not patched yet, like you could just drop a bunch of ransomware also and lock up a bunch of people's. Like, don't do that. Also, please.
This is bad. This is mega bad.
Also, don't do that.
Good disclaimer.
This is asking for a friend, Rich.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. But what's my Bitcoin wallet?
It
if you want to mow your lawn, yeah,
it's my category of it's so awful that has looped all the way back around to awesome. I refer to these as awesome.
Well, something that is an unmitigated awesome is our sponsor for today. So let's spend a few moments and thank our sponsor for today, and that is indeed Vanta. Risk and regulation ramping up, and customers expect proof of security just to do business. Vanta's automation brings compliance, risk, and customer trust together on one AI-powered platform. So whether you're prepping for a SOC 2 or running an enterprise GRC program, Vanta keeps you secure and keeps your deals moving. Learn more at vanta.com/CISO. I have to warn, we have CCL in the chat. If you're rolling on the floor, make sure there's no lawnmowers around, okay? Just make sure you're good. The floor is no longer safe. I guess the floor is, it's the lawn. Rolling on the lawn laughing would be the danger here. All right, let's dive into our first story. This one making news the last 48 hours really here. Turns out school's out for Canvas, as my children's rising apathy might indicate the end of the school year is indeed upon us, which means it wasn't a great time for Instructure's digital learning platform Canvas to go into maintenance mode for free for teacher accounts yesterday, following a ransomware attack by the Shiny Hunters group. Canvas had been listed on their leak site since May 1st, and this outage and defacing of Canvas's site seems to be a second wave of attacks to ramp up pressure to pay a ransom. The full scope is unclear, I still think, at this point in terms of how many institutions were impacted, but Shiny Hunters claimed 8,800 schools. We saw confirmations from Harvard, Columbia, Rutgers, and Georgetown sending alerts to students about the outage. Instructure CISO Steve Proud said impacted information includes names, emails, student ID numbers, and messages on the platform there. This exploited a flaw in the free for teacher accounts, and Canvas seemed quick to want the situation to seem resolved pretty quickly there, and then seeing that second stage attack. We've seen long-term impacts from the Power School breach from last year. This is a big kind of ed tech thing I can kind of wrap my head around here to compare it to. Right now, everything is back up as of this recording, and seems like things are back to normal. But this was a big kerfuffle, especially given the time of year. I'm sure we'll get some more details on this. I'm curious, Jason, let me start with you. What lessons are you learning from this that you might bring to your teams, or what kind of takeaways are you seeing from this?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. From one, and we talked a little bit about before we got on the show here, it's about the asymmetric attack vector. And what I mean there is you're seeing that threat actors like shiny happy attacker, or whoever we're going to call them today, they don't go after the individual schools. They go after vendor concentrated areas. Like, where can I attack? Where can I have that impact where it's going to have the most outsized again, impact compared to what I do. I have to hack one spot and it's going to impact, like they're saying here, 8,800 different people on it. So I think there's two aspects to it. So we have to be really aware, just from a supply chain standpoint, if nothing else, or our third parties, where are not just me and my close cohorts using, but whereas like an entire sector, what is an entire sector, whether it's healthcare or in this case, education, where is it concentrated? And we're going to see an increase in these type of attacks. I'm starting to see an increase in these type of attacks where it's a concentrated service. And then to your point right here, they're now looking at how do I even, pour gasoline on that fire? Well, then it's a concentrated, outsized, asymmetric timing. So I'm in there, I get it done, but then I hold it, or maybe I just time that. So, hey, not only that, it's going to cause the most disruption for the most drama, the most leverage I'm going to have against those victims.
Jonathan, where are you at in terms of trying to wrap your head around everything that we've seen this week regarding Canvas?
Yeah, I think honestly for this one, if you're not directly impacted, it's probably not going to take up much of your time. But again, there's always something to learn. Learn things the easy way when other people have a bad day, unfortunately, and we're not wishing anybody ill. But at the same time, I think there's always lessons to be learned about breach response and the public nature of that. And anytime somebody says, "Oh yeah, we're good," "Oh, we're not good anymore," like that never ages well. But it's also indicative of the pressure and the stress that these teams are under. And one of the things that we have discussed as well was, this is to Jason's point, this is the exact most critical time of the academic year for most people. And we've seen threat actor behavior change over the years from, lie in wait and live off the land for a little while until everything's just right. And then it accelerated from there to, hey, we saw, the initial attack and gain a foothold here. And then minutes later, people saw, we're seeing a ransomware screen. Maybe this is kind of getting back to, hey, let's wait until we can really make it hurt and really make it, from an attacker standpoint, that is, make it potentially the victim here is more willing to meet some demand or whatever the case is. I think maybe they can talk to the PCP attackers from the previous story and see, okay, hey, can we negotiate down the ransomware payment? If we'll be nice and I'll pay this, but I won't pay that. All that kind of stuff. So I think, jokes aside, I mean, this is obviously a very serious issue for the Canvas team. So we wish them well. But I think definitely things to learn from a public response perspective.
Yeah, and to give them full credit, I mean, we like the fact they're coming out with the information that was lost.
Oh yeah,
I mean, we have seen. I will say, compared to the Power School, we know so much more now, and admittedly, obviously, completely different situation. So I'm not saying anyone's better than anybody else,
right.
But if I was impacted by this, I would feel at least a little better. And hey, maybe I'll get some free credit monitoring out of this too.
Yeah, but we're not going to change your grades for you.
Yeah, gentlemen, dang it.
And I think there's a couple of things there. What is good about what's happening there, to Jonathan's point, like, hey, it's the measured transparency, right? They're coming out and they are giving those updates as soon as they can. So at least the impacted individuals beyond, Instructure, which is the company for Canvas, beyond their impact, because they're a victim. Okay, so they've been attacked and there's sub-victims kind of down the road, the re-victimization that goes along with it. So doing your best to help those folks who are also impacted by a second, third sort of order is key. But, that's a hard needle to thread for any organization. Like, when do I release this information? What do I say? Because unfortunately, I think it's a sad state of affairs, but the re-victimization of organizations is a real thing. So every word you put out becomes a potential legal or regulatory follow-on attack, and I do consider them attacks. An attack vector for organizations. So again, hard needle to thread. I think they're doing a good job, and I wish them all the best on it.
All right, next up here, everyone is trying to ride the patch wave. The Chief Technology Officer at the National Cybersecurity Center in the UK, Ollie Whitehouse, fantastic British name, said in a blog post, the use of AI tools by sufficiently skilled and knowledgeable individuals is increasing the likelihood that vulnerabilities will be identified and exploited at scale. He encouraged all organizations to prepare now when a patch wave arrives. Talk to Linux kernel admins, they're right there with you. And we're already seeing the economics of this patch wave play out, though. Google revamped its vulnerability reward program for Android and Chrome. Android secure enclave exploits are getting a bump in bounties up to 50% for the top prize, 1.5 million, I think now. But Chrome exploits are getting a cut of up to a tenth of their former payouts. That they have a really weird weighing scale for a lot of that, so it's tough to kind of know exactly. But Jonathan, I'll come to you first here. I said we're going to talk about the patch wave. Here we are. As AI vulnerability scans are getting more sophisticated, we're likely going to see ever more complex chains of exploits, both from our internal scans. Hey, we found the thing, yay, and from bad guys, boo. We know it's coming, but I'm curious. We kind of talked about no longer looking for vulnerability scanning, but exploit scanning. Like, I guess when we see something like this as an industry, how are we responding here?
I think there's a couple things to think about. Exploitability is definitely one that's top of mind, and what the actual risk to your organization is. There's so many, particularly in software vulnerabilities, there are so many different configurations and layers and possibilities that if this switch is flipped, it is vulnerable. If this one isn't, even though other conditions are true, it may not be vulnerable. So it really comes down to what's your risk tolerance, what's your risk profile. I do think there are a lot of us, and I put myself in this boat, trying to figure out if we can automate the identification of vulnerabilities, we should be able to automate the resolution of those issues. And so, I think we're seeing a lot of times we see tools come out, and there's a good guy use of that tool, if you will, like what security teams would be using a tool for. And then we see the misuse and the perversion of that tool by attackers. Maybe this is the case where attackers came out with the tool first to identify these vulnerabilities, but we need to turn that around and really work and put our heads together to come up with some ways to automate some of this resolution. Also, it's of note that we don't have to patch something to prevent an exploit, right? There's lots of layers. There's web app firewalls. There's all different kinds of technologies that are out there. Too many to list right now, where we need to have those layers of security. It's called defense in depth for a reason. The other side of this coin that I will say is that, zero-day exploits in any form get a lot of press, and not unreasonably so, especially when you have potentially murderous lawnmowers. I mean, that's, again, I can't stress that enough. But
PMS, yeah.
But I think here the key though is you have to have your whole house in order. Like if you've got all the other stuff from last year or 3 or 4 years ago that's patched up, great. Think about this too. But there's some basics that I think we should all be sure we have set first before we spin out of control on the latest XYZ. Again, some of those things really might float to the top of the list. Some of these Linux vulnerabilities that are coming out very well may hit that point. But there's a lot of these that are like, okay, maybe we can take a little risk there to go upgrade that OS that's 7 years old.
Jason, where are you at with this?
Legacy vulnerability management is dead. And that model actually was never achievable. It was never achievable. It's Sisyphean. So you're never going to make everything that's vulnerable invulnerable. And I'll even posit that right now, everybody listening, seeing this podcast right now is vulnerable. You just don't know it yet, because that's that idea of 0 day. So if you're concentrating on like, I'm going to be able to react fast enough at the speed of threat, the speed of vulnerability, nobody's ever been able to do that, ever. Because you're like, oh, patch comes out, I got to fix it, and I got to do a patch cycle, and it's Patch Tuesday or whatever it is. And the SLA between there, we used to kind of have a little bit of a time flexibility, a little bit of a time gap to do that. You don't have it anymore. You just don't. And so, as I lean heavily into the exploitability management of it, and so find out what's the accessibility window look like to the things that are exploitable. And then you really concentrate your vulnerability management and your mitigations there as much as you can to break that kill chain, to break, to make sure that you've handled it. And at that point, it doesn't necessarily need to be a patch. It can be a mitigation. And so exploitability can be handled through mitigation, often is. Things like internally, you should be looking at microsegmentation. Like, okay, CI Fortify is going to tell you, you're going to have to do this in critical infrastructure. If the security rule, going to have to do it, no longer addressable, but required. So when you think about microsegmentation, it's really just about limiting that blast radius. You limit the impact of that vulnerability being exploited. So the idea here is to understand where your crown jewels are, what are your primary assets, what are your critical functions, and isolate the potential damage should one of those get impacted, or the things that are around it that could impact it adversely. So,
all right, I don't need to breathe into a paper bag. Like sometimes I read some of these stories and I'm like, okay, all right, that all sounds tough but manageable, and I'm that makes me excited for the opportunity as opposed to dreading the inevitable, which may be the same thing, but I still feel better. So thank you for that, Jason. Our last story of the day, a tale of two critical infrastructure attacks. Taiwanese authorities arrested a 23-year-old student for interfering with the Tetra communication system used by the country's high-speed rail network. The suspect allegedly used a software-defined radio to send a general alarm signal that triggered emergency braking on nearby trains. This resulted in 4 trains being halted for a little under an hour on April 5th. The system's verification keys hadn't been refreshed in 19 years, which was the age of the system, and used known broken encryption. Then, Poland's domestic intelligence service said attackers breached water treatment facilities in 5 towns in 2025, in some cases gaining access to industrial control systems that could have disrupted water supplies. The country's internal security ABW said this posed a direct risk to the continuity of water supply operations, to which I would reply, duh. Neither of these sound great. Obviously, water facilities like that is some very critical infrastructure and a familiar target for APTs these days. But the train one I think sticks out to me. You know, SDRs are old tech. Like this is nothing new here, but it seems like we're still encountering critical infrastructure which is secured by the idea that, hey, if the hardware is that needed to exploit it is expensive or it's niche, you know, we're that's kind of a security through obscurity there. I don't feel like that's the case anymore. I'm curious for you, Jason, which one of these stands out?
well, they both stand up for different reasons. And, you know, security through obscurity is a lie. It's not security. It's smoke and mirrors. Yeah, it's security, air quotes, through obscurity. I think we have two things here. One, when we have a TikTok tragedy, okay, not to make it less, but I think the more dramatic there is the train, right? Because that would be something that would get an immediate news attention. You know, it's literally a train wreck, right? So it's going to be more acute and visible impact on people, even if it only affects, you know, a few hundred people. The bigger problem here, though, the one that's really problematic is the water treatment facility, because again, back to that asymmetric impact. I take out one train, it's horrible and dramatic and tragic in that aspect. But if I take out a water treatment facility, that could fracture a non-trivial part of an area's ecosystem. Instead of a few hundred people being impacted, tens of thousands could be. And then I look at it this way. So if I take out the water treatment facility, I'm also taking out the hospitals. I'm also taking out all the things that would rely on that too. So it's that example of a hyper concentrated thing that you don't necessarily think about, that butterfly effect. What is the downstream effect? It is way more impactful. So I think we need a lot more intentionable action on what I would call invisible threats, because it's definitely the worst of the two.
Jonathan, do you feel same way there? I mean, it's tough to argue against water, right?
Yeah, for sure. As something that obviously we all rely on every day. We rely on safe drinking sources for all of our water, and hopefully everybody has access to that. And that one definitely for sure is the one to watch closely. I will say on the train article, I don't want to overlook that the system failed closed, and that the result was there were 4 trains halted for 48 minutes. 48 minutes for people to be inconvenienced, rather than the train thought it was slowing down, but it actually was accelerating, or I mean, any other catastrophic kind of thing could have happened there. So I think there may have been, I mean, I'm speculating here, obviously, but there may have been some sort of control. You know, the last ditch effort is stop the train, maybe, and that's the deny all at the end of the rule set, right? But at the same time, again, the water source, anytime you've got, to Jason's point, that concentration of impact, it's not even concentration of impact, it's the reach of a potential impact from one concentrated source is really, that's where we should be focusing. So These kind of attacks, unfortunately, aren't new, but hopefully we're learning from each one to figure out how to close some of those vulnerabilities, because not all of them might be exploitable. But in the case of water supply, anything that's vulnerable, we got to have eyes on it.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time here on the Department of No. But before we get out of here, is there any piece of advice that, based on our conversation today, that you could share with our audience? Jason, I'm going to start with you. Anything that's kind of stuck out here as a good takeaway for the audience?
Outside of killbots?
Yeah. I mean, well, it could just be killbots. Like, don't go buy lawnmowers.
No. I think it's the big takeaway here is start looking at where that concentrated risk is. Where are the key constraints that have the asymmetric impact? That happens in your organization, but also happens in your own personal life too. So start thinking about the things that impact not just you, but could have that outsized impact in your programs, in your life, in your care, in society, and in your friends and family. I would say, hey, that's where you need to focus. And then you need to focus, the second order on that is, how do you mitigate it? Because you're not going to stop it from being invulnerable, it's not going to make it invulnerable, but know where to focus your resources, and that's probably where you should focus them.
Interesting. I like that idea of finding a way to, I don't know, disaggregate that bundle of, make that asymmetric, not as big of a target. I like that. I'm thinking about, how do I apply that in my personal life? Will be my challenge this weekend. Jonathan, what about you? Any piece of advice for the audience and for me? I'll take it too.
I'll take the non-cybersecurity path and check on somebody that you care about this weekend. This weekend is Mother's Day in the U.S. and unfortunately, not everybody has a great relationship with their mother. So check on somebody. If you do, and you have a mother-like figure in your life, please go tell them how much you appreciate them.
I couldn't think of a better way to close out the show. I hope everybody enjoyed this fascinating discussion. I mean, just a lot of interesting threads in this show today. So thank you both for being on the show, for your time. I know you are busy folks. I know a Friday, lots of stuff going on. So thank you so much for being on the show. Before we get out of here, Jason Elrod, CISO over at Multicare Health System. I hear you. If people liked you on this podcast, they might be able to hear you somewhere else, right?
There is an opportunity there. So if you want to connect with me, actually go on LinkedIn and connect with me. I'm the Jason Elrod. Jason Elrod was taken. I'm the Jason Elrod over on LinkedIn. Go ahead and follow me up there. But you'll know it's my site because it'll link to my podcast, which is Drink Coffee, Do Cool Stuff. Less killbots, more entertainment.
More entertaining than killbots?
I don't know.
Wow.
Maybe I'm trying. I'm working on the tagline still. But hey, really,
that's the podcast guarantee.
Podcast guarantee. Okay, what would you do if you didn't have to do anything? You didn't have the constraints. The answer would be drink coffee and do cool stuff with people of purpose. Come on over and listen.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you also, Jonathan Waldrop, the CISO over at Acoustic. We will have links to both of your LinkedIn in the show notes as well, and have you back on the show before too long. Two of my favorite guests to have on the show. And a big thank you also to our sponsor for today, Vanta. Thanks for helping make the show possible. Remember to send us feedback anytime, feedback@CISOseries.com. Remember to join us next Friday for 4 p.m. Eastern for another edition of the Department of No. And make sure you're going to events, the events page at CISOseries.com to see everything that we've going on, all of our Super Cyber Friday events. Make sure you're registered for those. We have live events coming up. We have all sorts of fun stuff there. So if you're a fan of the CISO series, make sure you're seeing how to stay engaged. Thanks for coming to our Friday stand-up here. Have a great week. Stay secure out there. For myself, for our wonderful producer, Josh, for the big boss man, David Spark, and the rest of the CISO series team, here's wishing you and yours to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOseries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.